how does 4 weekends of music in freezing cold Montreal, Canada sound to you? If you're anything like me, I'll pass on anything below 50 degrees. But today we will discuss how Igloofest is using NFTs in an interesting way. Hello, I'm Taj, digitally known as Tropic Vibes, the host of Nifty Business, where we highlight NFTs and explore Web 3.0 as we move from pure speculation to creating real-world value. So first of all, I must say that when I hear Igloofest and we're talking about Montreal, Canada, it automatically brings me back to my younger years. Believe it or not, before I moved to the States, I first came from Jamaica. We spent a year in Canada. Now, of all the cities my mother chose to move to, it was Montreal. It was absolutely freezing. I was only 5 years old, hardly remember the city very much, but I do remember the extreme cold and the fact that they didn't really take kind to us not speaking French. But that is another topic in itself. Tens of thousands of people standing out in the cold, dancing and raving to this music. The videos looked absolutely amazing. The outdoor party looks like it was a fun thing. However, as a Caribbean, going to Canada to party in the snow or in the cold doesn't really appeal to me. But I think those people that were there, they look like they're having a great time, so I'm happy for them. But if that wasn't enough to excite the people, Igloofest is actually incorporating NFTs into a scavenger hunt. Now, this fest is a multi-weekend celebration, so what they're actually going to do is encourage returning patrons, because you can actually show up to some of the events, some of the concerts, and of course, being out in the cold, maybe you're a little bit hesitant of coming back after that first night, but these NFTs are going to encourage people to not only come back, but also explore the grounds and go to areas they might not necessarily have traveled. Now, as far as NFTs being at concerts, that is something that I've covered. It just seems like a match made in heaven, ticketing solutions and NFTs. And of course, there's been apps, people showing up at events, getting that proof of attendance. Those things have been around. And not to mention, we've even discussed NFT bonuses for concert goers. But what actually is interesting with this is they're using QR scanners on site. And of course, being Igloofest and out in the cold, the thing that is going to be retrieved are some Yetis. There are 21 different Yetis that could be collected. Oh, and by the way, a Yeti is like an ape-like creature from the Himalayan mountains, but in the West, you know, this side of the world, we call it the abominable snowman or whatever it might be. But just picture a Bigfoot that walks around in the snow in the mountains. So that is why this is fitting for this Igloofest to be a Yeti. And by the way, the same name for the Yeti coolers and the Yeti cups, that's where that name comes from. Because they keep things cool, they also keep things hot, but the name comes from that ape that walks around in the mountains in the cold. Well, one thing that came to mind with this is the fact that they're using the QR code. I wonder how they're going to prevent people from putting that on their Instagram or just sharing that out with other people. Is this going to be a dynamically changing QR code or something of that nature? Because when I thought of how I would incorporate these things into live events and what have you, I always thought of it being geo-located. And at this point, the technology really isn't there for that. They're still being developed and worked on and tweaked to see how you can have these geo-located NFT mints and what have you. But I would love to see how they're actually going to incorporate that to prevent people from just going out and sharing that. Because if it were me, I know for one, I'd be in the warmth of my room, or let's say snuggle up around a fire or something. And if I could have a buddy just send me the QR code, that'd be pretty awesome, right? So of course, that would be defeating the purpose. So I know they have to have some measures to prevent people like that from doing that, because I know I'm not the only one that thought of it. So there's going to be one Yeti available at each of these 5 activity locations, plus an additional 15th anniversary Yeti. So those of us that are at home following and doing the math, that is 4 weekends times 5 locations plus 1 equals 21 NFTs. And besides the fact of having these commemorative items and being there and saying, yes, you were at Igloofest, and having that as sort of a talking point and a collectible, which is, in my opinion, much better than even a app. I would say it's like a app on steroids, but the cool thing with this is it actually allows you to get prizes. So one of the prizes that will be given away is a trip for 2 to the next Igloofest, including 2 3-day festival passes, transportation by train or rail, 2 nights in a Hilton, Quebec, and some other goodies. And then one of 5 people will get season passes to Picnic Electronique 2023, which is a weekly electronic musical festival which takes place also in Quebec. That happens through the summer though, so the warmer months, that sounds something that is a little bit more appealing to my Caribbean blood. So that could be a cool prize. And for those that do like the chilly weather, there's also free passes to Après-Ski, which is a nightclub that is held on Fridays and Saturday evenings. And based on my research, Après-Ski is like a French word meaning after skiing. So apparently this is a ski type of thing where people hit the slopes or whatever it is, and then they go have a good time in the party afterwards during the nighttime. Well, this Après-Ski nightclub is all themed around that, and there's multiple locations of that. So that is a prize for it. I do think this whole thing is just very interesting because not only are they incorporating things that we know and love, such as a QR code, which is just basic standard technology at this point. It is stable and reliable, but also the simple fact that there's prizes and things that those people are already interested in. Anyone that is willing to stand out in the cold, dancing, listening to music, what have you, you know that they're fully engaged. They are committed. They're a unique bunch. They are absolutely bought into this. So having these Yetis, which is very fitting, people out in the cold, Yetis, the abominable snowman, it's just on brand. And the whole Igloofest, the name of it, I think is just great. And the fact that they have been doing this for 15 years and people are still coming out to this thing just shows that there is a unique appetite for this sort of thing. So engaging all of these things in a way that is perfect, on brand for their community, those people, those patrons, I should say, is very cool, but also explores the idea of different ways how these NFTs could be used at events and festivals and what have you to have people not only come back, but also explore the grounds, go to areas that they might not have gone to. In this case, they're hoping that people attend to see various artists that might be lesser known. Of course, people will stand out in the cold for the big name artists. However, the opening acts, if you will, or some of these smaller acts might require a little bit of incentive, and who knows, those people might be the next headliners at the next Igloofest. So I think this is a very cool way to get people to engage with things that they might not necessarily do. And when it comes to these events, and it makes me think of, let's say, sponsorship booths, because let's say they have a fest or a conference. One way to ensure that people will go to the sponsorship booths is that you have some sort of NFT, some sort of reward, some sort of prize. And I think that is going to be a lot better than, let's say, a random drawing or a raffle, because people have something to actually show. They can actually engage with it. And even if they lose, they still get value of it by having that. So I think that is cool. And that is something that you can always utilize and add value to down the line. Let's say with a random raffle drawing, you know, the traditional way of doing things, putting names in a hat, whatever it might be. Once that is over, there's really no value to get from that. But with the NFT that is in someone's wallet, let's say they return the following year and they have two, you might be able to add an additional utility by saying, okay, well, if you attended last year and this year, you'll be entered into a special drawing. Or if you go 3 in a row, then you can get a super impressive grand prize of whatever entered into that one. So there's different ways you can always add benefits to it, add utilities to it. And these Yetis down the line, in this particular one, of course, this has been going on for 15 years. This is the first one that they're using these NFTs, but now each year there's going to be more in theory. And I'd love to see how they're going to incorporate all of that, how they're going to add benefits, maybe gamify it in some way. And they can get really creative on how they're going to use these in conjunction with the sponsors, because these prizes that could be given out, it could also encourage repeat visits to booths, you know, subsequent years, because a lot of times if we've already been to a sponsor, we say, all right, we know what they're going to do and we don't really want to pay attention to that. So they can get really creative. Those prizes can be a win-win. It could be a benefit for both the promoter of the event and also the paid sponsors that are getting these booths. But speaking of sponsors, I must say, this show has none. It is powered by listeners like you. And I'm working on a few concepts behind the scenes on how I can monetize the show without ads and while adding value to you. So if you'd like to have any early access to that or hear what's actually happening behind the scenes, get some exclusive stories in addition to that, the best way to get that is through the newsletter, niftybusinessweek.com. As things develop, that is where I'll break it first. But either way, I would like to thank you for taking time to listen to this as we're learning and building Web3 together. So until next time, later. The Nifty Business Show is not investment advice. It provides insights and information within the space. As with anything, please do your own research before making a decision whether you're making an investment or a purchase.